Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is having a great day. My name is East Brave, and welcome back to the Passion Project, where I'll explore millions of podcasts widely available on all streaming services and report back to give you my honest take and review. I also like to thank you all for your continuous support. You can continue to do that by dropping us a like and subscribing to our channel. But more importantly, watch and share our videos because that will help grow our community and our channel. If there is a podcast that you are currently listening to that isn't on my radar, reach out, put me on, and I'll be sure to put out a future episode reviewing that podcast. Let's cut the intro and get into today's episode. Before we begin, I'd like to preface with a quick disclaimer. I am not a professional or a qualified journalist performing at the highest level. I am, however, an independent journalist and a podcast lover. Therefore, the information that was gathered to deliver this episode was gathered from public sources and whatever I could find online. Of course, we do our best to filter out any misinformation. As such, we only source information from trusted sources and websites. If you find anything that was out of place or miscommunicated, feel free to drop it in the comments. There is also mention of sexual assault in today's episode. If that is a heavy subject for you, skip this video and we will see you in the next one. With all things considered, please choose how and when you'll listen. And with that, let's get into today's episode. I am super excited for today because we will be reviewing a special podcast I hold dearly because the podcast is hosted by our beloved talk show host, Oprah Winfrey. Now, if you were born in the 80s, like myself, then Oprah needs no further introduction because she was a household name during this time. I feel like Oprah was everybody's mother because we grew up watching this woman on TV. And we don't have like social media like how the younger generation today. Our screen was literally like the TV. Now, if you were born after 2001, you may have heard of her name at best, but you may not privy to her work and catalog. For those reasons, let's dive into Oprah's life, career, and credentials. According to Wikipedia, Oprah was born in Mississippi on January the 29th, 1954. She was raised in poverty and had a tough childhood where she lived with her grandmother for a few years of her life and experienced physical abuse by her grandmother. I'm also going to keep in mind that this was during segregation. It was the Jim Crow law. But, there was a lot of racism, a lot of poverty, and it just wasn't a good time. Oprah was destined for greatness because she would later become the richest African American of the 20th century. May I add that she was once the world's only black billionaire. So, sorry, Jay-Z, but you weren't the first black billionaire. Oprah is an American talk show host, television producer, and author of several publications. She is famously known for her hit talk show called The Oprah Winfrey Show, which was first aired on September the 8th, 1986. It ran for a total of 25 seasons right up until May 25th, 2011, with about 4,561 episodes. The show remains the highest rated daytime show in American television history, averaging between 10 to 20 million viewers per day. If you ask me, that's one hell of a run. Over the years, Oprah has reinvented her show, focusing on literature, self-improvement, mindfulness, and spirituality. She created a series called Super Soul Sunday. The series first premiered on October the 16th, 2011, and ended on December the 19th, 2021. I digress. I'm currently 39 years old, and I have been a fan of her show for as long as I can remember. And as I sit here looking back, there is no question that her talk show was ahead of its time. During those days, there were many stigmas and taboos developed around the subject of mental health, self-help, and wellness. Mental health wasn't a topic that was highly praised, nor was it widely accepted by society. So for years, Oprah received a lot of criticism because she was the first pioneer to push this narrative and advocate on the sensitive subject that no one wanted to touch on. So we got to take a quick minute to give Oprah her flowers because she paved the way, making it easier for us to have these discussions today. And it's in this foregoing conclusion, we can start to see that the younger generation is reaping these rewards today. We live in an age where mental health is the new wealth. Not only is it widely accepted, but it should be super celebrated by no metrics. Now, Oprah and Prince Harry had joined forces in a docu-series first aired on Apple TV. It was released on Friday, May 21st, 2021. So this was during the pandemic. The docu-series is called The Me You Can't See, where they have honest discussion about topics of mental health. Now, I haven't actually seen it myself because, as I'm telling you this, I first discovered the docu-series when I was doing the research for this episode. So I definitely will have to check it out. And I do encourage you to do the same if you are serious about taking your mental health to the next level. Now, I read an article first published on December the 2nd, 2015 by Arielle Corinthios. I do apologize if I butchered your name. Through People's Magazine. The article was a short read, and it saddened me to learn that our beloved Oprah was sexually assaulted by her cousin, which led to pregnancy at the age of 14. Yeah, I've been a fan forever, and I didn't actually even know this. So that's new news to me. So this wasn't her first time that she was essayed by a family member. Accordingly to Oprah, she shared that her first memory of SA was at the age of 9. Later, she would be essayed again by another family member and again by another family member. She did end up giving birth to two of her sons, when she was a teen, who died in the hospital weeks later. This reminded me of a recent incident that was in the news about a Spanish tourist traveling with her husband. They are social media influencers traveling in India where they were robbed, tied up, and she was gang R-worded by 7 men. I was disgusted when I first read about this, and be that as it may, I certainly don't want anyone to take this lightly. And I say this with a heavy heart that this is a serious, ongoing problem in our world. Accordingly to the global rape statistics by country of 2024, provided by datapanda.org. Um, yeah, you might want to check that out. I don't really want to go into the statistics, but as I sit here looking over Oprah's body of work, it is clear to me that she has built her legacy with the deep burning desire to protect, educate, and heal the most vulnerable group, which are women and children. And as a man, we need to know better so that we can do better. We need to respect our woman, we need to praise our woman, and we need to celebrate our woman. But more importantly, we need to start protecting our women, man. I apologize for taking us down an unexpected turn of event, but I want everybody to know that I strongly support today's message. All right, let's get into the podcast. So, this podcast is groundbreaking as it covers a wide range of topics such as mental health, education, and real life stories that inspire and repel human subconsciousness. Oprah interviews some of the most influential thought leaders and spiritual leaders of our time, renowned doctors, scholars, modern day philosophers, health and wellness experts, best selling authors, and much more. Oprah does have a website. You can access that website by going directly to Oprah.com, where you can access her popular series of Super Soul Sunday, which was first aired in 2011 to 2021. There, you can have access to exclusive content, but you do have to be a subscriber to one of the following paid networks: Xfinity, DirecTV, Dish, Uverse, Spectrum, and Optimum. But they are all free in the podcast format that is available right now on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Currently, there is a total of 496 episodes on Spotify. Yes, I know this is because I counted every single one of them. It took a few minutes. But the first episode was aired on July the 27th, 2017. And the most recent episode was aired on April the 3rd, 2024, which was just this past Wednesday. So let's get into the bad, the good, and the ugly. Let's start with the good because we all like good news. All right. So the first thing I like about this podcast is the experience you gain from listening to this podcast. And let me be the first to tell you that not only is this podcast sensational, it's euphoric, therapeutic, and extremely informative. There is nothing short of food for thought and a lot of aha and revealing moments that you get out of listening to this podcast. If you have ever felt you are deeply missing something in your life and in dire need of a resolution or closure, well, look no further because this podcast got that salsa that you are missing in your salsa. This is your one stop shop that will guarantee to take you to the next level. Now, all the interview from Super Soul Sundays were filmed on her Hawaii estate. I do enjoy the peaceful scenery in the background. Sometimes you can actually hear tropical birds and nature in the background when you are listening to these series. Now, these interviews are inspirational and thought provoking. They create open dialogue to sensitive subject where we are faced with dealing with the uncomfortable truth. I feel like this is where we all find commonality because we all long for that one thing that we are missing in our lives. And this podcast is that one missing component that gives us all the answer that was once a mystery. Another thing I like about this podcast is the conversation. They say the most powerful tool in conversation is your voice. Um, the way we sound, the reflection of our voice, our tone, our cadence. I have listened to many podcasts, and this is the first thing I can quickly identify is how soothing their voice is. Can they be authoritative without sounding overly powerful, or do they come off as narcissistic? Now, every person being interviewed by Oprah, you can tell that it's not their first rodeo. You can immediately tell that they are veterans in their field and they wear their expertise as their armor. They are very crafty in their delivery, highly articulate, and they are extremely good communicators. And let me tell you, they never miss a beat. Now, I'm going to be the first to say this. I think that the Oprah Winfrey show was ahead of its time. This is why her podcast is so successful because, for one, she garnered millions of audiences since 1986, right up to her last episode was aired on in 2011. Don't forget, her Super Soul Sunday series started shortly after that in 2011, ran for about 10 years to 2021. So she took the same formula and she replicated this formula and injected into her podcast. And this is why I think her podcast has such a successful journey in the podcasting market. Another thing I like about this podcast is that it is a safe and secure place where we all can find commonality, a place free from judgment, where we can explore our traumas, our mental health, our depression, our anxiety, our deepest fears and thoughts. I'm all for people finding a new safe space to recreate themselves. This podcast not only hands you the tools and roadmaps to meet you where you are, but also takes you where you need to go. Also, it is good for our fighting spirit. Every time I dive into this podcast, I feel understood, I feel loved, and I feel accepted. Make of that as you will, but a lot of us need that. And if you have ever considered getting professional help through therapy, then this podcast is a good introduction and a good starting point because this is where your workshop begins. We need to grow and evolve so that we can transcend to higher levels of subconsciousness. All right, let's get into the bad thing about this podcast. Now, I came onto the scene during the pandemic, and I think that started in 2020. Therefore, I was late to the punch clock. Now, I have been up to date with every new episode, and I've been trying to catch up with much older episode. So the bad thing I learned about this podcast is that this is a place you go when you need it. It doesn't necessarily mean you'll regularly listen to it over many other options that are widely available on the market. I find myself skipping a few episodes here and there, but I always manage to circle back to them when I feel like it. The truth of the matter is, too much of something can depreciate in value, and too little of something can create tremendous value. We don't always wake up on the right side of the bed. Sometimes we enjoy some negativity over short periods of time. Trust me, I completely understand. We all have that one friend who has toxic positivity, and that is defined as the following. Toxic positivity happens when people believe that negative thoughts about anything should be avoided, even in response to events which normally would evoke sadness, such as loss or hardship. Positivity is encouraged as a means to cope, but tends to overlook and dismiss true expression. We don't always need to be filled with positivity. Sometimes we go through things and we are trying to live in the moment and to deal with them. So, for these reasons, it's impossible to want to listen to this podcast all the damn time. Let's get into the ugly thing about this podcast. Initially, I wasn't planning to review this podcast merely on the fact that the subject and discussion in this podcast can do a lot of wonders for us, especially in a time of need. But the downside is that if it falls under the wrong hands, it can do more harm than good. Knowledge is power, but it could also be weaponized. So I want to be extra careful with how I put this message out because we live in a digital age where there is nothing short of content predators with vulture interests. When God gives you the voice to influence, it's important that you not send the wrong message or lead people astray. We need to conduct ourselves in full service. Let me give you an example. I would like to use two well known influencers who advocate the importance of mental health, and they are currently leaders in this specific space. Charlemagne the God is a successful American radio host who is commonly known for hosting the Breakfast Club radio station. He is also a television personality and published author to two books in the self help and mental health category. He was the first male celebrity, and I want to highlight the word male here, who openly and publicly admitted that he was going through therapy and advocate the importance of getting right with ourselves mentally. I mean, this guy made it cool to go through therapy. He was the first person that actually inspired me to get professional help through deep trauma therapy, which ultimately I ended up going down that path. Another influencer goes by the name of Dr. Sarah Al Madani. I do apologize if I butchered your last name, but I am a huge fan. She was first introduced to the world on a TV show called The Housewives of Dubai. Sarah was born and raised in the United Arab Emirates. She started her first business at 15 years old and has since become a well known public speaker and an inspiration to women in the UAE. Now, both influencers are sound minded individuals. If you don't know who they are, you can get familiarized by following them on Instagram. They are humble thought leaders who advocate effortlessly and gracefully in the mental health space. Of course, Charlemagne the God may be a little rougher on the edges, but it doesn't take away from his ability to send the right message. I do enjoy observing their work that they are currently doing, and I look forward to seeing more of them. Now, I know by now everyone knows who Andrew Tate is. This guy needs no introduction. The concern I have is that a bunch of wannabe Andrew Tate going into the space with venomous elements. And as we know, learned behaviors are looked at under a microscope through social media, so we mustn't send the wrong message to our youth. Now, I have been through deep trauma therapy myself. I was raised in an abusive home. I was physically, mentally, financially, and spiritually abused by my parents. I also experienced extreme pain from physical torture. Um, I was even chained up like a dog countless times when my parents needed to step out. I was given a bowl of white rice and a couple of water in case I got hungry. I remember, man, probably being 4 or 5 years old. There was a chain around my ankles, and that chain was connected around a guardrail of the stairs. I just remember sitting there thinking, like, what if this house burned down? Like, who the fuck was going to save me? A lot of my upbringings affected me, and for years I always knew that I needed professional help. And that day finally came in January 2020. It was, you know, the beginning of the pandemic, and it was the year with the 2020 vision. I had a starting point and an end goal. I went in with this in mind that I wasn't going to publicly document my journey on social media for the world to see, because my journey was sacred, and I truly believe that not everything is meant for public consumption. And with all this considered, please be responsible for not eroding the fabric of mental positive change and spiritual enlightenment. As I sit here and reflect on the enormity of my situation and the seriousness of it, all the weight was hanging in a balance on this one decision, which was to get the help that I needed. I got in touch with a therapist. That therapist's name is Dr. Gillis. I see her every 3 weeks. Now my marriage is flourishing. I have a great relationship with my children. Everyone is happy. And this was the best decision I have ever made. And my only regret was that I wish I started sooner. All right, let's close today's episode. So, for me, growing up in the 80s and the 90s, it was tough. Let me school you on this topic as we take a look at historical scope. Mental health had a bad stigma surrounding this particular subject. I remember phrases like toughen up, or I'm being told to suck it up. Things like stop being a sissy or stop being emo. There is no question there was a lot of toxic and social sewage during this era. This leads me to believe that my generation is the last generation that lacks empathy, which is anyone who was born right up to 1985. Go ahead. I challenge you to take a look around at the people in your life. Anyone who was born before 1985, you're going to quickly discover that these people have good logic. Some actually really don't. Some are actually really stuck on stupid. But the point is that they will fail miserably in the empathy category. Everything is based on logic to them. And this is the very same people who have a hard time regulating their emotions. Yet they are the same people calling the younger generation snowflakes. I think my generation and the ones who came before are just as equally sensitive. We just wear our armor a little bit better. So clearly, this subject is a very sensitive topic back in my time. It was bad to the point that if you went to seek help from a therapist, you would typically keep it to yourself for fear of being labeled crazy. And this was just the overall consensus. Back then, people don't want to be associated with crazy. So you would be quickly exiled from your friends and peers. You would have zero support from anyone because it was easier to ignore the underlying problem than to be associated with anything that they don't want to be known for, which is crazy. Now, our parents fought in wars, and if they weren't fighting in those wars, they were fleeing from one. Our grandparents were probably fucked up. They raised our parents, and our parents became fucked up. Now they raised us, and now we became fucked up. So it's just this trauma cycle loop that never ends. And we were never taught how to have open discussions about the root causes of those underlying problems. And it's because we never spoke of it. We never got to seek the help that we needed to heal our internal wounds. This is the underlying problem. Mental health and wellness weren't as widely accepted by society as it is today. I'm glad that we live in an age where we recognize that life doesn't just happen to us, but they happen for us. We have the resources, we have the most passionate therapists, and all that allows us to take control of our lives and ultimately change out the lenses in which how we see ourselves in this world. This is one big step for mankind. And as we enter this journey through different doors, be mindful that we share common grounds of devastation and our misfortunes have similarities. but we are united because we share the same goal and objective, which is to heal our deep internal wounds and to get better, not only for ourselves, but for our loved ones as well. So, in closing, I'm a firm believer that no one can escape nor be exempt from life's greatest hardships. And it's in those moments of growth and elevation bring temporary pain and suffering. There's an old saying that pearls require a grain of sand before transformation could take place. So, yes, you will face many challenges that can bring great levels of discomfort. And it's this itch of annoyance that repels us forward, that gives us tremendous wisdom from our experiences, which in turn brings great treasure. It's 2024. Be who you need to be so that you can present your best self. Your self discovery awaits you. I'm going on the record for this one. Not only do I advocate this message, but I strongly support this message. And that wraps up today's episode. Until next time. Peace!